Do 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 do. Ba da ba 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 ba. Right, you ready? Are you ready? Start your engines, cause all hell is breaking loose on the internet. They can't keep the good people down. They can't. They're trying, but they can't. They've pushed, but you can only push the people so far. It's different from country to country, but let's take the example of Britain. We all know Britain took a leap out of Europe, and that's a sign that you just need to know where the line is. You can't push beyond a certain point. Now, to make this to make this slightly less abstract, I've just finished one of those pointless Facebook chats, and not even a chat really. It's kind of two monologues basically as you try to frame the situation. People are saying that that it's interesting how a lot of famous people are getting sick and ill and using it to garner some level of sympathy or at least some level of attention. Quite frightening. Now, we know that this virus is real, and we know that this virus can cause serious problems. We know that this virus, like all other flu viruses, causes a large amount of death. And excuse me while I drink some coffee here. And because it causes that, we've got to treat it seriously. Yeah. Now there's people saying that the British Prime Minister didn't really get sick. He was just looking for sympathy, and we have to be very careful about spreading malicious rumors without facts that we can't prove. Now, how do you know something is a fact? Well, it's less important whether it is a fact than whether you can actually prove it. Because if it's a fact but you can't prove it, doesn't really matter much, because you're not going to be able to convince or persuade people without force, and force equals failure. So so I've been reading a lot of anecdotal evidence of this person spoke to nurses, and this person spoke to doctors, and these doctors spoke to other doctors, and these people said this, and these people said that. And there's no way to really know. There's no way to double check it unless you get the information directly from the horse's mouth, somebody who was there, who saw it happen, and is prepared to go on record, either verbally or to make some kind of written statement, either personally or through a lawyer or something like that. The lawyer would obviously give them some level of protection. Now, there's a lot of misinformation and disinformation out there as well, because if you want to control the narrative, then essentially you also want to confuse the other side at the same time. So there's going to be a lot of information, a lot of stories. The original, and we'll get into this at some point, that the original name of the BBC was the Ministry of Information, and if you follow the work of, maybe you know the name Steve Pieczenik, who wrote books with Tom Clancy and was head of different elements of the CIA and operations. He said basically his job was to lie. His job was to give false information to newspapers, to give false information to other countries about what was happening. It was to buy time and to buy space for operations to happen. So there's a lot of false information out there. You have to give information from reputable sources, and even reputable sources make mistakes. So how do you know it's a reputable source? Well, over time you will learn. Over time you will understand how accurate certain stories are. And there's two kinds of stories: people writing about what happened, and people writing predictive stories about what is going to happen. We don't know exactly what is going to happen, but we can we can follow certain writers, we can follow certain people, and we can see how accurate and inaccurate their predictions are. Because if you're making predictions, sometimes you're going to get it wrong, and sometimes you're going to want to get it wrong as well. And so just because somebody puts out a piece of information doesn't mean that they want something bad or negative to happen. It's just the way that it is. So be careful with the way in which you approach those elements of information. I'm not going to put out on my page anything that I believe that is questionable. Or if I do put out something which is questionable, I'm going to put out, this is questionable. Does anybody have any more information? Can we look into this a little bit more? Is this real or is this not? And then people can get back to me and they can say, well, look, it's not real because of this. And there's been a lot of that it's too easy just to copy and paste what somebody else said and share it with other people, or to retweet something without actually checking the what would be I don't know, the verifiability, is that a word, of it? Should be a word, but we need to check that. Now, moving on, billion stories. Billion stories. I can't keep up with it myself. Massive folder of information, and also disappearing information as well. Things I was going to do a little presentation yesterday, and I went to get the information from the sources today, and it's gone. It's just gone from the net. So, that's why it's important to reach out and connect with people every day right now, because things are changing so fast that if you weren't involved, you wouldn't believe, right? Only those in the arena understand the nature of the game. So, before we dive into a flick through stories that have been happening, I want to share with you something that I promised. Okay, simple solutions. Indian tonic water. Indian tonic water. Why Indian tonic water? Because it's got quinine or quinine, depending upon how you pronounce it, in it. Check for tonic water with that in it. And if you want to know what that does, originally, and of course this is why tonic water is mixed with gin, because originally that was used as a medicine against malaria, basically, by the Brits when they went out to places like India. And some anti-malarial medicine is actually good against strong flu viruses. So read the label, understand what you're taking. But this is just genuine tonic water that you can buy in the shop, basically. So, and read the other ingredients as well, because they pump a lot of rubbish, artificial sweeteners and stuff into these drinks. So you don't want to be mixing the good stuff with the bad stuff. And you can just drink it straight from the bottle. I've got my colloidal silver here. There we go. Just spray it in. Got my extra vitamin C. And some zinc. There you go. Right. Okay. So, and that's just a little bit of. I didn't take everything out of the kitchen because there's a lot more stuff in the kitchen that I've got there. Also spent an hour outside today getting some sun on the skin. Very important. Now, talking about time, I'm going to do something on the coronavirus bill that was passed through the British Parliament. I know that people are screaming and hopping mad about the American one, which was somewhere between, I don't know, some ridiculous amount of money, 2 to 3 trillion, 2 to 3 trillion, basically, on I don't even know, care stimulus. It's a massive bailout. It's an unbelievable amount of money. I mean, I can't even comprehend a trillion. So 2 to 3 trillion. So, a billion planets, a trillion planets, it's crazy. Now the British government, and I imagine most other European governments, doing exactly the same thing, promising to hand out money to businesses and individuals, yet that money is being borrowed and it's going to have to be paid back. And there you go, you're handcuffed again. Okay, so that's obviously a short-term solution. I don't think it's a long-term solution at all. But that's the way things are. So jumping into my Facebook feed while it still exists, every day there's less and less of these pages on Facebook, but that's okay because we can start them up again. Let's not be defeated. So, what have we got? And there's a huge number of stories recently, and there's a couple, 3 or 4 I wanted to add. There's 3 or 4 right now that I was just reading that I want to add to this, but I'm not going to get there. Anyway, so I haven't spent all my day doing research today. I've been out with the kids, getting some sun by the sea, enjoying the waves, and there we go. So here we go. Here's a graph which comes together with the story about COVID-19 proportions of total deaths, number of people dying, and comparisons of previous years. You know, you can go into the story. You'll find the story on my Facebook page. The reason why I'm going and showing you these stories is so that you can search for them yourself and hopefully be able to find them as well. Why don't you put the links? Because I'm not a bloody machine, okay? I'm a human being, and there's limits on my time, and my family come first. I think that explains it all. So, so there you go. Anyway, basically, the graph is showing that there's no great increase in deaths. Also important to know that in previous graphs that I've shown, there is the curve is beginning to slow down and flatten before the lockdowns were introduced. That's really important to understand. And that's why one day after the British lockdown was introduced, the British minister in charge of it revised his figures one day after the lockdown was introduced. So he introduced the figures, they introduced the lockdown, and then he said, oh, I'm sorry, I made a mistake, but the lockdown was already in place. Boom. You see how they catch you? They see how they get you? You see how they manipulate you? Very easy for them, isn't it? Very easy. Right. Interesting background. The Bank of England to finance UK government COVID crisis spending. To finance it? What does that mean? They're just borrowing money based on the generated income of the future taxpayer. You know, you're bought and sold through the birth certificate, right? Certified. You're certified. Might just as well be crucified. Okay, here's another graph showing what's happening in the United States, and the figures are getting revised every day to actually be better, even though the media is pumping out stories about it's getting worse, it's a crisis, it's a tragedy, and you know that and the organizations are jumping on board because they don't want to seem to be left out. And what do we have in Britain? The RNLI, which is the Royal National Lifeboat Institution, and this is important because I live near the sea. Probably saw that from earlier posts. They're advising surfers not to go out because if there's an accident, there'll be no lifeboat to come and get them. And I don't understand why there won't be a lifeboat to go and get them. If you can have the police functioning and certain ambulances functioning and people in the hospital functioning, you can probably have a lifeboat functioning as well. Or maybe it's the services connected to it. I don't know. But the fact that there's barely ever any surfing accidents here, and the surfers know what they're doing anyway. They don't usually go out on their own, and the idea that surfing spreads diseases is just the most ridiculously retarded, backwards, idiotic thing that I could possibly imagine. Anyway, stay at home, stay safe. Right. The extreme safety is the most dangerous thing that could possibly exist. Now, as a person who used Skype previously, I'm very interested in the story about how Skype messed up and Zoom has taken over. And this shows you just how much you don't want to trust the work of Bill Gates, basically. I'm a great fan of Skype. I've used it for many years in my business, and it's been relatively good, but now it's been surpassed by Zoom. I used Zoom the other day, and it did everything I wanted and more. Easy interface. And Skype hasn't improved in 10 years since Microsoft bought it. There's basically been I mean, there's constant little updates, and they do have the text-to-speech function, which is really unique for Microsoft. But it doesn't give the user enough variability and mobility and enough, you can't really move things around very much. It's extremely fixed, and it hasn't added really any features that people need. Anyway, that's an interesting story. I asked if anyone had a source for this graph, and that was somebody posted an article, and this is what, sharing is caring. It's great. Thank you guys. And I was able to get around to reading it later. Not enough time to read everything. Okay. Disease expert criticizes restrictions. You're safer outside than in. And you are safer outside than in. You need, I didn't really understand much about the herd immunity concept before this whole crisis sort of brewed up. It didn't really make a lot of sense to me that that a lot of people together getting a disease would actually be in some way beneficial. But actually, it is. The herd immunity does function, and just as those general regular childhood diseases that kids get, just as they get them, it's important to understand that we need them. Our body needs to build resistance. One thing that happened recently was I read an article that helped me understand that this obsession we have with cleanliness, this obsession we have with keeping everything absolutely clean, is actually not healthy for us. We need a balance, right? I'm not saying leave things dirty, but I'm also saying that we can't in life avoid having accidents. We all know kids need to play in the dirt and the sand. We know that. I think a lot of us in our modern lifestyles have distanced ourselves from those elements of everything. That's why we need to get out in the fresh air. We need to get out in the natural waters. We need it. We need it as human beings. So you're actually safer outside than inside. Interesting point, especially if you're stuck in front of the mainstream media. Hopefully we're not now. Hopefully we've progressed. Interesting article from Armstrong Economics talking about Bill Gates controlling the World Health Organization. Covered that in a previous presentation. Hey, it's Easter. I posted this picture because I wanted to remind people to spend time with their loved ones. Now, we forget about the simple things. I mentioned Bill Gates. Bill Gates is the founder of Microsoft Corporation. We know that. We also need to realize that he's not an epidemiologist, not a virologist, not an immunologist. As a result, people criticize parents when parents ask questions about vaccines, and people go, "Well, you're not a doctor." Well, hell, Bill Gates is not a doctor either. So it doesn't mean that he can't be right. It just means that we need to be careful about the automatic rejection and the automatic acceptance of ideas. Police vow zero tolerance on physical distancing. I've seen it how they're in some countries they're saying you have to walk in on this side of the pavement, you go this way, on the other side of the pavement you go. It is madness. It's complete madness. I mean, how much are you going to put up with? When's it going to end, huh? When's it going to end? Now all those people saying listen to the doctors, listen to the nurses. I've got a billion articles. No, 15 articles by different doctors here, all stating that lockdowns are completely unnecessary. All stating the figures are lower than are being published in the media. Oh, and I didn't get into the bill. I didn't get into the bloody bill and the coronavirus bill in Britain, which what the media has been printing is not true. What the media has been printing about what people should do is not true. For example, you want an example? You are allowed outside. The media's printing everywhere. They've even got these little signs that they put up, and they put them on the social media posts, and they put them in the newspapers, and they put them on TV that you should have physical exercise. You're allowed outside for once a day for physical exercise. There's nothing about once a day. There's nothing about that in the government regulations. Basically what the regulations, go and read the regulations. Basically what they say is if you have a good reason, you can go and do what you need to do. That's it. A good reason. And it's not even defined what that is. So it also only talks about limitations in reference to where you live. It doesn't talk about anything else. It doesn't talk about what you should do after you go out. I mean, the scope. I mean, luckily, the scope is huge. The scope is huge, and it's very much open to individual interpretation, which is why it's good for the people. And it's bad for the authorities, because the authorities don't know where to draw the lines. And the authorities love to be authoritarian, surprisingly. So anyway, CBS News is in trouble for posting fake video of a crying nurse to spread panic and fear. She was saying, "Oh, it's so difficult," and all this. It was fake. It was a fake video, and it was shared and tweeted out, and everyone said how, check the source. The mainstream media gets things wrong as much as anybody, because we're all human at the end of the day, right? And the fear and panic continues as the media promotes that coronavirus travels 13 feet in the air. So it doesn't matter if you stand half a meter or 2 meters away from somebody. There you go. Anyway, that's just designed to get people to be scared to go outside, scared to breathe. It's just like those articles on how bad joggers and cyclists are because they're spreading the virus. It's just insanity. Just stop and think for a second, please. I haven't watched this yet, but it's the Corbett report, and Corbett is well researched and produces very balanced reports that have all the links and all the references there. I'd say he's in the top 10. So if you're not following his work on geopolitics, and he's been doing it for a long time, then I'd say it's worth checking him out. He's definitely been ringing the alarm bells about things that are now happening that he said were coming. Oh dear, livescience.com, coronavirus death may be lower than previously thought. Huh? You don't say. The figures were all just made up, guys. They were just, the initial figures were all just made up. Right, people just, I mean, at the start of a pandemic, you get this kind of spike, and you're like, if it keeps going up, and it doesn't keep going up. It runs out of energy. Yeah, still not a good thing to have, but there you go. Moving on. Past the homeschooling links. Guinea pigs, malaria vaccine championed by Trump is trialed on NHS wards. Yes, you're being guinea pigs if you go into the hospitals. Be really careful. Just make sure you know what they're doing, because sometimes they don't even know. Killing ourselves to flatten the curve. This is about economics. Shutting down businesses had nothing to do with the virus. Absolutely nothing to do with it. COVID is actually a perfect cover for mandatory biometric ID. It is. It's another chance to roll it out very slowly and subtly. Check you know what is happening. Smithfield in the US is, according to Reuters.com, Smithfield in the US is shutting down pork plants indefinitely and warns of meat shortages. Well, the powers that be want us off meat anyway, don't they? Did you get that? Are you aware of that? That they want us on the plant-based diet, and the meat is constantly demonized. the thing is that there isn't really a substitute for it, and it's relatively necessary. And this comes from a person who's been vegetarian and vegan for parts of their life, and quite enjoyed being it. I've lived with meat, I've lived without meat. I see both sides. I see no reason why you can't have a period of time with one and a period of time with the other. But it's just another element of the agenda that they can they can cross off their list as it goes. China imposes restrictions on research into origins of coronavirus. I wonder why. Why would you do that? Why would you? It's funny because it's as if China would let people research it anyway. Would they even let people do that? We can't even get the right information. We can't. Right. But where do you even begin? Where do you even begin with a story like that? According to Yahoo.com, coronavirus can spread through the soles of shoes. Yes, they want to scare the shit out of you. Oh my God, I can't breathe. Oh my God, I can't wear shoes. Oh my God, what if somebody else is? It's mass insanity, and the media is scraping the bottom of the barrel of ridiculousness once again. It being Easter Monday today, I recommend to you the film Risen. Of course, Christian story, right? Now, this is what I was talking about with the definitions of what the media is misreporting. What the media is misreporting in terms of, how do I describe it? In terms of the bills, and in terms of what people are allowed to do and not allowed to do. The media have just made up their own rules. The media have got their interpretation of what it is, and it's just like a game, because they know you'd think the newspapers would print the whole bill, but that's not their job, is it? Otherwise they would do it. Their job is to keep you dumbed down, to keep you ignorant, to keep you off track, to make sure you're not focused, so that they can help the system tick over through the crisis. Anyway, keywords. I want to talk about keywords that are in the government guidelines. And there's this whole mesh up between guidelines, bills and laws, and I'm not going to get into that today. I just want to talk about something that will help you, which is understanding that when the government issued their bills and guidelines, they said activities can include, which means that they're not exhaustive, which means that you can basically go out for any good reason that you have to go out. They also say that if you have any reasonable excuse, you can go out. Now that's different for everyone. So when you've got they say if you've got an excuse, you can go. What I suggest is you get a copy of it from the government website, you print it out, and you carry it with you, so that if anyone stops you, if anyone questions you, ask them if they've read the bill, ask them to repeat it to you, and if they're unable, say that you got a copy and you're quite happy to share it with them if they'd like to know. And that's probably enough just to make them go away. Have 2 copies in case they steal one of them, right? Been there, seen it happen. There you go. So, and all of this information the government put out only applies to the act of leaving the home. Once you're outside of the home, they appear to no longer apply. And this is coming from lawyers, right? So from tommorris.org, I didn't put up the whole story because it's a really long story, and I wanted the key piece of information there, but there was a story about the case of a woman who was arrested while loitering between platforms at Newcastle Station. Newcastle, oh, why I man, at Newcastle Station, demonstrates the absurdity of the police's behaviour during the coronavirus crisis. I have been known to loiter between platforms at train stations. Weirdos. Generally, this is what one does while waiting for a train. I suppose so. She was arrested and convicted in absentia without even uttering a word. At no point did the police conclude that someone who seemingly could not confirm their own name or address or instruct a duty solicitor might not be fit to plead and did not seek any kind of mental health assessment. They're just doing whatever they want. Once the emergency powers bug bites, vulnerable are always going to end up being victims. Yeah, it's like the gun thing, right? Whether you like guns or you don't like guns, vulnerable people need to protect themselves. The elderly, young women, the disabled tend to be areas of society, and in the past they were used and abused, and they had no way to fight back. You know, three big thugs come in to break into the home of the old woman. There was nothing she could do, but if she put out a gun and, you know, let off a few rounds, she had some kind of protection. You know, when seconds matter, the police are only minutes away. So I just lost my place now. Yeah, don't let's not make it any harder for people who already have hardship, shall we? Eh? Right, I think we're beyond that. Part of the point of the rule of law is the police and government operate based on the rules that are written down, which we can read and inspect and think about for ourselves. Police officers and the criminal justice system enforce laws, not vague guidance or statements made by politicians and media interviews, and certainly not bloody tweets. If it isn't written down in law, you can't be punished for failing to follow it. So yeah, you set a high standard for yourself and then expect that of everyone else around about you. One love to the world right now. One love. Just want to send out a couple of seconds of love. A couple of seconds of love, because if you don't let love rule, then your passions will be fueled by hate and fear. Yeah. Now, William Binney is a good man, and I posted a link to an interview with him where he talks about the CIA's intelligence co. That'll give you background information on the media and what is happening in the media. And hey, no better time than now, right? No better time than now to understand all the nuances of that. Yeah, this is a link to tommorris.org's article that I just mentioned, where media are printing false information about how and why you should leave your home. Why would they even do that? Why would you want to misinform people? Los Angeles doctor says very ill patients basically symptom-free after taking the Trump-touted drug. That's from Washington Examiner. Now, I talked the other day about hydroxychloroquine and zinc. Mentioned zinc already today. You know, the solutions are out there. The solutions are out there. Now, London Real did a very interesting interview with Mr. Ike, and then London Real got their videos taken from YouTube, and they just got banned from LinkedIn. They got banned from LinkedIn for interviewing somebody. Now, whether you like Mr. Ike and London Real or not is irrelevant. If an organization is presenting itself as a commons of information and debate and discussion, then they should allow the speech of everybody there. The most protected speech, in fact, is speech that you don't like, right? The most protected speech is, in fact, the speech of the other side, the speech of your opposition. The most protected speech is the speech of socialists and communists and Nazis and other similar extremist groups, because that's how we learn. Communication is how we learn. When you start banning one little element, it just grows and gets bigger and bigger and bigger. It's like the books of law, you know, originally there's 5 laws or 10 laws, and then there's 20, and then 50, and then 100, and then 1,000, and then 10,000, and eventually there's so many laws that they all contradict each other, and you can read it any way you want to read it. And one of the nice things that Trump did when he got into power was say that if you want to introduce a a new rule or law, you had to remove two pre-existing rules or laws. Very simple thing, very effective. Um, and it helps clear the path and allows business to function. Of course, it could be misused, can always be misused. This article was sent to me that John Oxford, who's supposedly a virus expert, says that the media has created panic, and that the actual statistics and figures are much lower. I read the article and it looked like it was written by a child, so I'd like more feedback on who this person is, because maybe it's just their writing style. Maybe they wrote it in a hurry. I don't know, but it doesn't seem to be written by a very studious person from my perspective. And so I'm going to have to reject it. It's crazy when we have to reject the things that we'd like to be true. But that's the ability to assess information. That's discernment, right? One of the many, as I say, one of the many skills that's not taught in schools that should be taught in schools. Discernment. We're just studying the fake news. God, most news is fake news. That's the problem. The UK confirms a plan for a coronavirus contact tracing application. That is some scary stuff where you're going to, they've got all the information and data anyway. I mean, it's just putting pressure on people to have their own little thing installed. You see the way that's the information is already popping up on Twitter, on Facebook, on your email, on every web page you go to. That they're training you that it's going to be okay to have it on your phone. It's just a little application. You won't even know it's there. And then they're going to have you submitting all the data about all the places that you've been, and they're going to have you panicking about who's been where and why and when it's none of your bloody business. Of course, you're not going to get information about them. They're going to get information about you, but you're not going to get any information about them. It's all one way, right? It's all one way. Now, what happens when they get it wrong? What happens when they get it wrong? Who pays for their mistakes? Who pays for their mistakes? Huh? They going to pay for their mistakes? No, they never pay for their mistakes. Huh? They never. Is that too much? Do they sometimes pay for them? I think they pay for them every second, and that's how they end up where they are. They pay for them every second because they never pay for them at all. Do you understand that contradiction? Do you get it? And the fact that 1 million people are now out of work in Britain. It's estimated that 500 million to 1 billion people worldwide are going to get sick and die as a result of the shutdowns. Who's going to pay for that? Huh? They're throwing it out like everyone's responsible for the death of people. Stay safe and stay at home and save the NHS, and you're causing deaths by doing stuff. Life is for the living, right? Life is for the living. Epidemiologist Neil Ferguson, who created the highly cited Imperial College London coronavirus model, which has been cited by organizations like the New York Times and has been instrumental graded projection of the potential death toll on Wednesday. Yes, they got wanted. And then the other thing that the media does is they say it's blue. Days later they say it's green. Just cover the facts so that if somebody says, but then you said that, they can say, well, we also said the opposite as well. Or I said blue and green, could be right and wrong, up and down, left, right, whatever. They are, if you look carefully enough, they will print contradictory stories. But of course, some stories will be bigger than other stories, right? Covering their asses. But who pays? Are these people going to pay? Are these people going to go on trial? Now, real Italian stats. This is important because of something called comorbidities. So this is when if somebody dies, they have like a pre-existing condition, and so some have 0, some have 1, some have 2, some have 3, some have 4, some have more, and only a small percentage of the reported deaths related to coronavirus in Italy, where the average age of a person who died was 78 or 79 or something, and like the average age in that area a person lived to was 81, so they were already on that border anyway. So only a tiny little percentage of people actually had no other problems. So, how fair are the statistics there? Tell me, how fair are the statistics there? Now, again, related to the collection of data, Bloomberg's daily technology newsletter. Did you know Bloomberg had a daily technology newsletter? Printed an article where they said Apple Inc. and Google unveiled a rare partnership. Really, were they really in competition with each other? Are Coke and Pepsi really in competition with each other? Were Levi and Wrangler really in competition with each other? Were Nike and Adidas and Puma and Slazenger really in competition with each other? Which one was it? There were two of those companies that were started actually by brothers. They were started by brothers, and one had one shoe company, the other one had the other shoe company. I don't think it was the Nike and Adidas thing. I think it was like Puma and Slazenger or something like that. Go and check that out. Go and check that. I can't remember which brothers it was, but it appeared that they were in competition. But it's just another form of cartelism, basically. Anyway, Apple and Google unveiled a rare partnership to add technology to their smartphone platforms. Don't know why I'm doing this in a James Bond accent. That will alert users if they have come into contact with a person with COVID-19. People must opt into the system, but it has the potential to monitor about a third of the world's population. The technology known as contact tracing, don't worry about it, we've got a name for it, is designed to curb the spread of the novel coronavirus by telling users they should quarantine or isolate themselves after contact with an infected individual. Your phone is going to fucking tell you what to do. Do you understand? Your phone is going to tell you what to do. That little Android in your pocket is going to tell you what to do. It's deeper than that, actually. It's deeper than that. I mean, constant contact with the phone is already rewiring people's brains. It's already rewiring people's brains. Much madness. We also had Yahoo.com UK Finance page put out an article, confirmed coronavirus cases is an almost meaningless metric because the statistics are so all over the place. It's out there. The information is out there if you want to search for it. It's out there if you want to learn. It's out there if you care. It's out there. And you know what's true. You know what's true. You know what's coming. Deep down inside, you probably don't want to face it. You probably don't want to face it. Yes, they're wiping stuff off the net. Yes, they're wiping stories. Yes, they're blocking people, and they're doing it all for a reason. They're not doing it for no reason. They're not doing it for no reason. They've got their plans. They've got their agenda. So I have the doctor's information lined up as well. I'm going to have to do another report because it takes me 45 minutes to get through the main stories. It's ridiculous. It's absolutely ridiculous. And I'll tell you what happens, right? I prepare stuff yesterday and I go back to check it out today and I find out, oh, this video has been removed for violating YouTube's community guidelines. And that was a doctor just talking about his personal experiences and solutions. He was giving solutions to patients as well and posting it online, and it's gone. It's gone. You can watch Justin Bieber change his T-shirt, and people murk each other on Call of Duty or Fortnite or whatever platform they're playing on. Not against it. I'm not against it, but come on, let the people decide for themselves. We're smart enough. We're smart enough. Any notes from Twitter? A lot of the stuff there is just repeating what I've been seeing and saying on Facebook, and frustrated about. Interesting to note that the predicted peak death of coronavirus across the West was Easter Sunday. I mean, as if it is 365 days in the year. Is it a coincidence? It's definitely a narrative it's definitely a narrative designed to scare people away from worship. I agree with that. Or is government thinking it's God? There's the question. More stories about embezzlement. Did you know that the average general flu has killed 60,000 people this season? No one cared in North America. COVID, I find it interesting that COVID has ID at the end there. ID-19 has killed 20,000. Half of them in New York City. Isn't that weird? Isn't that weird? Half of the registered deaths are in and around New York City. Do you really want to know what I think about that? You know, the localized cases suggest bioweapon attacks. Or at least the releasing of certain agents, and I don't mean people in terms of agents, I mean substances. So, and as if that hasn't happened before, governments have tested many times their horrible, evil bioweapons and pills and drugs on people without asking. A famous test on the New York subway where they released gases there. Also tests in hospitals as well, on patients without letting them know. Tests on foster kids as well. Tests with new vaccine drugs on various groups. It kind of just seems like they're just permanently testing stuff. So if you want an example of how the media manipulates information and stories, and people are often not thinking when they're reading, and what they gain from what they read is, you know, the thought that is put in to the text, right? They repeat then the information that they read without really understanding it. And if any text tells you at the beginning the conclusion or tells you what to think, then they're pre-programming you. Anyway, here's an example that I picked up on a tweet on Twitter that New York Times wrote regarding Biden's staff. We found no pattern of sexual misconduct by Biden beyond hugs, kisses, and touching that woman previously said made them uncomfortable. I mean, if you take the first half of that, we found no pattern of sexual misconduct by Biden. And then take the second part, beyond hugs, kisses, and touching that woman previously said made them uncomfortable. You can't have two so blindingly opposite statements written together except in a major newspaper. It's ridiculous. It is absolutely ridiculous. And what's happening to all these overrun hospitals? Well, Oklahoma City Hospital temporarily closed most of its facility due to lack of patients. That was posted by diamondandsilk.com. Steve Pachenik posted, Bill Gates is not our friend. That may well be true. That may well be true. So there you go. That's just a little bit of information from tweets. So um, I'm still not going to get into the doctor story because there's still not enough time. I'm going to do a separate post on that and do that really quickly. You can reach me on Facebook under Graham William Hendry. You can reach me on Twitter. It's still me. You can reach me on Instagram. You can reach me on LinkedIn. You can also find me under the Academy of Language Therapy and Life Coaching. Language therapy is breaking down the language that you use to help you understand why it is you do what you need to do and the direction in which you need to go. So I hope this has been insightful for you. I hope you've learned something. I hope this has encouraged you to research something for yourself, and send me any links, send me any information, send me any little bits and pieces that you think might be useful, and we can put our heads together and we can get through this. Wherever you are, stay safe, and I wish you a fantastic day. Take care, guys. Back soon.